Hello, Emily and Toby, and Max and Eden. Today, we've decided that I'm going to read your bedtime story because I'm going to read you about Esmeralda. And Esmeralda is my favourite story in the Ten in the Bed book. There we go. So, are you all comfortable? Then I'll begin. This is Esmeralda. The next day, Dinah Price got up, got dressed and had her breakfast. She had cornflakes with the top of the milk on them, a piece of her dad's toast, and marmalade, a cup of tea and an orange. She told her dad about the three bears. He said that was very interesting. On her way to school, she'd been at school a couple of terms, Dinah told her friend about the three bears. Her friend said she'd had 4 bears in her bed at one time. So there's Dinah and her friend talking on the way to school. At school, Dinah drew a picture of the 3 bears in her news book. Her teacher, Mrs. Hicks, said it was very nice, dear. Dinah read her reading book to Mrs. Hicks and did some writing. When the flowers got knocked over, she fetched them up. The school dinner was shepherd's pie, peas and gravy, sponge cake and pineapple jelly. After school, Dinah went to play and have tea in her friend's house. They found a caterpillar in the garden. They made a home for it with dock leaves in a baby food tin. At 5:30, Dinah came home. She fed her goldfish and watched TV for a while. She rode her bicycle along the pavement in front of the house. When bedtime came, Dinah Price kissed her mum and dad goodnight, kissed her Uncle Jim too, who'd called in for a visit, stroked the dog, climbed the stairs, went into her room and found a wicked witch in her bed. This witch was dressed all in black. She had a tall black hat on her head. There was a pair of black button boots on the bedside rug. The witch's nose was large and had a wart on it. Her broomstick was propped up in a corner of the room. There was no sign of a cat. There's the witch's shoes. They don't look very comfortable, do they? Dinah Price looked at the wicked witch and shivered in her nightie. She knew a bit about witches. Only last week, her teacher, Mrs. Hicks, had told them a story about a witch. This witch used to catch little children and fatten them up in a bird cage. Later on, she would bake them in a pie, given the chance. The wicked witch looked at Dinah Price and scowled. "You're a skinny little thing, ain't you?" "Don't be rude," said Dinah. "Don't you be rude," said the witch. She pulled the bedclothes up under her chin. Dinah noticed it had a few whiskers on it. "You'd better mind your manners, little lady. I could turn you into a tin of beans." "My Uncle Jim is downstairs," said Dinah. "He is a hunter. He has got a gun." The wicked witch sniffed and pretended not to care. Even so, Dinah could see a worried look in her eyes. The truth is, Dinah's Uncle Jim was a bus driver, but the witch was not to know that. The wicked witch peered at Dinah from beneath the brim of her hat. The hat had tilted forward a little over one eye. It cast a shadow on the wall. "How about a story then? They say you've got good stories hereabouts." "Who told you that?" "Never you mind," said the witch. She sniffed again. "Come on, I haven't heard a good story in weeks." Dinah Price thought for a minute. "If I did tell you a story, would you promise to go home then, to your own bed?" "Depends," said the witch. "It would need to be good." "It would be." "None of this wicked witch business." "No." "Right," said the witch. "It's a promise." She snuggled further down the bed. Her long greenish fingers clutched the bedclothes either side of her chin. "Come on, let's be having it." So Dinah Price pulled up her stool, picked up a book, and began to read. Once upon a time there was— "Are you reading this or making it up?" "Never you mind," said Dinah, although the truth is she was making it up, as she had with the three bears. "Manners, manners!" The witch pointed a finger at Dinah. "I could turn you into a hole in the road." "Once upon a time," said Dinah, "there was a wicked, wonderful witch." "That's more like it," said the witch. "She was very beautiful, this witch, very beautiful. She had a beautiful black dress and hat, beautiful black hair and fingernails, and a very pretty wart on the end of her nose. Her name was Esmeralda," said the witch. The witch's own name was not Esmeralda, but she'd always wanted it to be. Esmeralda, that's it. Well, one day Esmeralda the witch was at home in her house in the middle of a wood. "What sort of a house?" "It was a neat little house," said Dinah. "It had a red roof, yellow curtains, and roses round the door." "And a little white fence," said the witch. "You forgot that. And a rockery." There's the house. Quite a pretty little house. Yes, well, there was the witch, and what she was doing was practising a few spells. She practised a spell for doing the washing up, and a spell for making the beds, and all kinds of spells like that. Anyway, suddenly she heard a noise outside and looked to see what it was. It was a horrid, naughty little boy. He was rattling a stick along the garden fence. "My beautiful little fence!" shouted the witch, and whistling through his teeth. So Esmeralda thought for a minute and said to herself, "I cannot stand for this. I'm going to teach that boy a lesson. What I'm going to do is cook him in a pie and eat him up," shouted the witch. Well, that'll teach him." Dinah Price thought for a minute. She was not too happy with the way the story was going. She said, "Well, anyway, first Esmeralda had to catch the boy and—" "Easy peasy," said the witch. "She just jumped out and grabbed him. Gotcha," she said. Dinah paused again. She could feel the story slipping away from her. So then Esmeralda carried the boy back into the house and put him in a pie, shouted the witch. "And put him in a bird cage," said Dinah firmly, "a big one that she had hanging up in her kitchen, because that horrid naughty little boy was also a skinny naughty little boy. He needed fattening up." "Oh, good thinking," said the witch. So after that, Esmeralda made lots of nice things and fed them to the boy to fatten him up. There was fish fingers and baked beans on toast and steak and kidney pie and chips and treacle tart and custard and chocolate cake. Also there was orange squash and a few Smarties. Now this boy, besides being little, naughty and horrid, was also cheeky and brave. "Was he?" said the witch. "Yes. So he ate up all these things without batting an eyelid, and afterwards sat in the birdcage, whistling once more through his teeth." "Like a canary," said the witch. "Yes. And after that he even rattled his stick along the bars of the cage. He's a pest, that boy," said the witch. Well, Esmeralda kept feeding the boy up day after day, and he kept eating and drinking everything he was given, and whistling through his teeth and rattling his stick along the bars of the cage. But the funny thing was, at this point Dinah had an idea for saving the boy. The funny thing was, he never got any fatter. The witch, however, was ready for her. Yes, he did. He got fatter and fatter all the time, fatter and fatter and fatterer. All right then, he got fatter. fatter and fatter and fatter, so fat he couldn't whistle any more or rattle his stick along the bars of the cage. I should have took that stick off him, said the witch. So fat, here Dinah had another idea, so fat that Esmeralda couldn't get him out of the cage. Yes, she could, said the witch. She smashed it open with an axe. It was made out of iron. Cut it with a hacksaw, shouted the witch. She hadn't got one. Pulled it to pieces with her bare hands, screamed the witch. By this time the witch was sitting bolt upright in her bed. Her hat had fallen off, her hair was sticking out like straw. What's going on here? I'm offering a good story and all I get is aggravation. You keep butting in, that's the trouble, said Dinah. Whose story is it anyway? That's what I want to know, said the witch. The witch leant over the side of the bed. She picked up her hat, which was on the floor. At that moment a voice called up in an angry whisper from the hall. Dinah, you stop that noise and go to sleep. Do you hear? It was Dinah's mum. You wake little Morris up and there'll be trouble. Then there was the sound of a door closing, and after that, silence. Dinah looked at the wicked witch, and the wicked witch looked at Dinah. Both had guilty expressions on their faces. Who's little Morris? Said the witch. My baby brother, said Dinah. He's in the other room. Oh, the witch stared closely at her hat. She wiped it on the sleeve of her dress and put it on. She drummed her fingers against the side of the bed. So, anyway, what happened in this story of mine? What happened, said Dinah. No more shouting, now. What happened was, just then a handsome prince came riding by, and he had a hacksaw. No, he didn't. He stopped at the witch's house for a drink of water. While he was drinking, now Dinah had a third idea. While he was drinking, he looked at Esmeralda. He looked at her beautiful black dress and hat, her beautiful black hair and fingernails, and the pretty little wart on the end of her nose. He said to himself, Who is this woman? She must be the fairest in the land. The wicked witch pulled the bedclothes up once more under her chin. A blush appeared on her otherwise greenish cheeks. She looked embarrassed but pleased too. She showed no sign of butting in. So Esmeralda invited the prince to stay for tea, which he did. They had egg and tomato sandwiches, Bakewell tart, homemade lemonade, and a few peanuts. The prince offered to help with the washing up, but Esmeralda wouldn't let him into the kitchen. Then after that they went for a walk in the woods, and the prince asked Esmeralda to marry him. Is there a picture of him there? Whispered the witch. Dinah turned the pages of her book. No, you'll have to imagine him for yourself. I can do that. Keep going. So anyway, the prince asked Esmeralda to marry him. You are the fairest in the land, he said. What did she say? Asked the witch. She said, Oh, your highness, I am but a humble witch. I do not deserve. But she said yes, though, said the witch, beginning to scowl once more. She said yes, said Dinah. After that, she packed her nightie, face flannel and toothbrush in a little bag and rode away on the prince's horse to his castle in a far country, and lived happily ever after, whispered the witch. That's it, said Dinah, and she closed her book. The end. There's the witch going off with the prince on his horse. The wicked witch heaved a deep sigh and sat up in bed. It was darker in the room now. Her hat no longer cast its shadow on the wall. In the tree outside the window, birds were twittering. From far off came the chimes of an ice cream van. The witch got out of the bed. She reached for her button boots and put them on. That story was all right, got better as it went along. She collected a broomstick and went over to the window. She gazed out. "Is this your garden down here?" "Yes," said Dinah. "The edge wants cutting." Dinah put her book on the bedside table and joined the witch at the window. "Are you going home now, to your own house and your own bed?" "No, I'll probably fly round for a bit," said the witch. "Witches work nights, you know." She climbed out onto the window ledge. "By the way, what became of that boy, that little pest with the stick?" "Oh, he just stayed in the bird cage for a while," said Dinah, whistling to himself till he got thinner and thinner and slipped out through the bars. The wicked witch dangled her bony legs over the windowsill and clutched the broom between her knees. "I think I'll keep an eye open for that boy," she said. After that, she said good-bye to Dinah Price, flew off over the gardens and garages, and disappeared into the blue and purple haze above the allotments. Dinah watched her go. She shut the window and pulled the curtains across. She got into the bed, still warm from the witch, turned over on her side, and slept till morning. The end. I hope you enjoyed that. There's the witch heading off into the night. See you again soon. Bye.